Welcome to Open Minds Radio with Alejandro Rojas. Open Minds Radio is your UFO news authority, presenting evidence and the latest news regarding the UFO phenomenon. Here's your host, Alejandro Rojas.
This is Alejandro, and you're listening to Open Minds Radio. Thanks for joining once again, and we have a great show. We have today Clifford Mahooty. That reminds me, you ever heard that kind of rap song or something? Mahooty hoo, hooty hoo. You have to be pretty ghetto to know that one. Hooty hoo. But anyways, Clifford Mahooty, which is very exciting because he is a Zuni elder. He lives in Zuni land in New Mexico. And he'll be speaking to us about the Kachinas. He's part of the Kachina Society. And I've heard him speak. You may have seen him. He was on Ancient Aliens. I think he's been on like one or two other television shows regarding aliens and stuff. Because he talks about what many people have suspected over the years, that the Kachinas may represent extraterrestrials. So that's pretty exciting. As you know, if you've seen them, they all look very strange and different. And so it's kind of exciting. And of course, we've talked about this before, that the Kachinas, or that the other Native American tribes and everything, a lot of them have these legends of coming from the stars, or that being their origins. And in particular, there's people who talk about, for instance, Quetzalcoatl, who is, of course, the Mayans are related to the Native Americans and everything. In fact, Native Americans are believed to come up from Mexico when they populated the Americas. And Quetzalcoatl was a being that came from space, and he taught the people how to plant and how to live. And I think we're going to hear pretty much that kind of theme from Clifford today. So this ought to be a lot of fun. He's a really neat guy. He's come to the UFO Congress a couple times. Antonio and I drove out to Tucson to see him talk about a year ago or so. So he's a lot of fun, and I'm real excited about that. You're gonna love it. So that's what we got going on later in the show. But for now, as usual, the thing that everybody gets so excited for is to hear the UFO news. And it's not just because the UFO news is great and there's lots going on, but they love to hear it because they love to hear Jason McClellan, our news correspondent. And ladies and gentlemen, you're going to love it because he is here in the room today, and he's going to tell us all about the news of the week. Jason!
Hey there, Alejandro.
Hola, senor.
Hola. I have a confession to make.
Uh-oh. You forgot the news?
I have no news.
Oh, no.
No, that's not my confession. My
Good.
confession is that this is also my favorite part of the show.
Oh, really?
It really is.
You are so vain.
Not always, but today it is for some reason.
Do you listen to it all week?
I never listen to this show.
And you're like, I'm so funny.
No. No, you're the joker on the show, my friend. I cannot replace you.
Well, you're pretty funny, too.
Only in secret. How about let's talk some news?
Good idea.
All right. Well, Britain's National Archives released another batch of Ministry of Defense files last week that announced to the world that they've captured UFOs and reverse engineered their technology. No, they actually didn't do that. But they did release files last week that cover reported sightings of UFOs from the period of time of, 1985 to 2007. And you wrote a nice little summary article on this on our website, Alejandro. And there wasn't anything earth-shattering in these files, as has been the case with the previous releases, but some interesting cases in there.
Yeah, I think there are some pretty cool ones, and the real cool ones are kind of related to a bit Ralph Noyes. If that's how I'm never sure how you say his name. Noyes, Noyes. But anyways, he used to be in the MOD, and he says, for instance, that in one of these real popular sightings, which is documented in these files from some pilots, some jet fighters, that they took some gun camera video or film, and he saw that. And so later on, and that's documented in this batch of files, he requested to see that and to get a copy of that. And they said they had lost it and they didn't know what he was talking about. So there's some of that and some other kind of struggles between some interesting people, such as Lord Hill Norton. We've talked about him before with Rendlesham. He was a very high-level person in the military who wanted them to take UFOs more seriously and believe there was something to it and really champion the whole Rendlesham thing. So there's some of that, some real cool stuff. Antonio, in the next 2 days, sometime hopefully, is going to release a story about Ralph and some of the research that he's done, because Antonio met him and he showed me these pictures of him with Ralph Noyes. So we'll have more about that part. And then we'll definitely be writing some more on these UK files, because there is some good stuff in there. Although usually the files kind of get a lot of media play, it already seems like it's dying off, this batch.
It seemed to die off a lot more quickly this time.
Yeah, only a few days of coverage, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Even though they admitted that a couple of these stories were pretty interesting and unsolved.
Hey, there was one story about a UFO described as a jellyfish.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that before.
Yes, that's something I've seen, a jellyfish UFO.
Mm-hmm.
So that was exciting to me.
Space critter.
Yep, the critters.
Which, of course, the DNA thing, did we talk about that last week, or am I preempting some of your news here? No, we talked about that last week.
No, we're talking about it this week.
Well, we'll talk more about it
coming
in a minute.
up. Yeah, that's right. But the interesting thing about these files, we've mentioned this before, but you can download the files free of charge, but only for a month on the National Archives website. After that, they go away, and I guess you can still get them if you pay. But
you have to pay, and it's not very much. It's like $7 or £7 per file, which doesn't sound like much.
There are 34 files here.
Yeah, that's $14 per 34 files. That's what, $400 or something.
Free is certainly much better. So if you go to the UK's National Archives website, you can download all 34 of these files for free.
It is a funny thing, because here, documents go into the public domain. We all, we're taxpayers. We paid for it. Everybody can use those, but not there. So I've seen some people post these files on their websites. I won't say who, but
don't get anybody in trouble.
The Queen might go after them. They might send
that's possible.
One of those secret MI4 or MI6 groups after them.
You're scaring me, man.
Ministry of Intelligence.
Yeah.
They're crazy people.
Let's talk DNA, because I know you're wanting to talk DNA.
Okay.
So, NASA scientists have discovered new evidence showing that DNA components found in meteorites can originate in space. Science Daily explains, the research gives us support the theory that a kit of ready-made parts created in space and delivered to Earth by meteorite and comet impacts assisted the origin of life. The research team analyzed samples from 12 different meteorites and found traces of adenine, guanine, and a variety of molecules known as nucleobase analogs, 3 of which are rarely found on Earth. Scientists have previously been aware that meteorites can contain DNA elements, but until now, they didn't know whether or not these elements originated in space. Engadget explains that the presence of these 3 molecules provides a strong indication that they do originate in space, which potentially raises new questions about the dawn of life on Earth and beyond. Dr. Michael Callahan of NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, is the lead author of the paper that details the recent findings, and the paper appears in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America.
Yeah, the whole transpermia theory, they call it.
That's right.
Which has the jellyfish been referred to, possibly something similar.
Right.
Your video.
Right.
And the whole transpermia thing.
Yeah.
But, getting to your idea of space critters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not just your idea. Of course, lots of people have talked about space critters, which I think
Yes, I'm not going to take any credit for
totally
the idea
makes
of space
sense.
critters. But
if there's life all over the place, it makes sense that there would be life, floating around in space.
Atmospheric beings and other things like that.
I had never thought about it until the Star Trek episode where these big crab-like things are floating around in space.
Right.
And I remember that's one thing with that episode. I was like, that's a really cool idea. And it makes perfect sense if there's life. I bet life is just literally everywhere.
And I've got to say, I'm pretty shocked at the response I hear from some people about that idea. You know, these are the same people who openly accept the idea that there are intelligent extraterrestrial beings out there somewhere. But then when you start talking about the possibility of these atmospheric beings or creatures living in our atmosphere or in space, that's a wild idea. You know, they kind of laugh at that.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got creatures and things everywhere floating in the air right now. We are breathing in living microbes and bugs and stuff that are floating around. Dust mites. There's a billion of them in this room. And in every room, not just that this is a dirty room or something.
Paul Davies says we have them on our nose, aliens in our noses.
Exactly. So, you know, if the life is so abundant, and especially if we're starting to find it possibly in the nearest planet, it would make sense.
Yes. And I mean, we talk about this a lot, but we don't even know, we hardly know anything about our ocean and even land. We're constantly discovering new species.
Yeah.
And that's here on land where we are.
Yeah.
So
it was Trevor James Constable who first talked about it, and he talked about
critters.
just that.
Yeah.
And the jellyfish type of thing.
Right.
These critters that were so, you know, like jellyfish and that out in space, they're probably really big. The closer they get because of gravity, maybe they get a little smaller as they go closer to planets and further. But, yeah.
And Ivan Sanderson also talked about the possibility of these
Ivo
beings, these electrical beings, or, you know, talking about the various possibilities of these things living in space.
Ivan Sanderson's one cool dude, and you wrote something on him for our next magazine, right?
Absolutely.
So a profile on Ivan Sanderson if you wanted to know more about him, which you do, because he's a very interesting fella.
I think it's worth a read. Absolutely. Well, Alejandro, let's move on. The SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, that's the SETI Institute, was forced to suspend operations at their Allen Telescope Array in Hat Creek, California in April due to lack of funds. This array is a key instrument used by the organization to listen for signals or messages from extraterrestrials. In June, the organization announced a fundraising campaign called SETI Stars that sought $200,000 in donations from the public to help resume operations at the Allen Telescope Array. And according to SETI Stars' website, that goal was recently reached, allowing the organization to bring the Allen Telescope Array back online. Tom Pearson, SETI's CEO, told AOL that the Allen Telescope Array costs $2.5 million a year to operate, so the $200,000 hardly put the dent in that enormous bill. The fundraising goal was set at the low figure of $200,000 because the organization had already raised other money prior to launching the campaign. The Daily Mail reports that actress Jodie Foster, who played a SETI scientist in the movie Contact, and Apollo 8 astronaut Bill Anders are among those who donated to the SETI Stars campaign to help bring the Allen Telescope Array back online.
Now, if you were one of those people sitting around with tens of thousands of dollars and you were thinking, should I invest in SETI because I do believe in extraterrestrials and civilizations, but further, you believe they're probably visiting us here, give me a call and I will put your money to good use and you will be very proud of that investment that you made. Trust me. So get a hold of us here at Open Minds Radio and we will take this whole thing to the next level. We're already doing that on a daily basis here, but we will even skyrocket this further. If we had the money SETI's getting, boy, we'd be flying around with our buddies in space.
Well, perhaps you're already doing it, Alejandro, but I aspire to get to the level
You're
where
doing
you
it
are.
right now. You're telling people the news and we're getting it out there.
You know,
good stuff.
It's incredible how much press coverage this has received.
Yeah.
And it's still making headlines, you know, and obviously
it's lasted longer than the UK story.
Exactly. But, you know, again, I think that's because in the public's eyesight, I guess, SETI is what they know for a scientific type search for extraterrestrial life.
Yeah.
They're the organization that gets the attention. And the reality is there are researchers around the globe doing research and probably more active than the SETI Institute is.
We covered the story of the Russians having their astrobiological, more than that, their SETI-METI conferences where they're talking about messaging spaces and receiving messages. And they seem to be far more advanced and open-minded and creative in coming up with ideas to actually make something happen, as opposed to kind of sticking to the same old and using these ancient technologies to contact advanced civilizations.
Well, and here we're talking about, sort of a passive method of just listening for something that may or may not be there. And for such a passive method, it's just insane how much money that costs.
Yeah.
And this is just one telescope array.
Yeah. You talking about it being a passive thing of listening, which it is, makes me think of, some guy on a farm out in a wheat field listening and trying to hear if there's anything out there like New York City, which they're not going to hear. And that's kind of what we are doing, is sitting there listening instead of actively getting out there trying to find some information.
I like SETI. I think what they're doing is cool, but, I think we talked about it before. I think there are other ways that are probably a better use of time, and, I would also be more supportive of SETI's efforts if it weren't so expensive.
Yeah.
That is
well,
so
and
much
other
money.
Scientists agree, though, that there are better ways to go about it.
I know. You're one of those scientists, Alejandro.
I'm not a scientist, really. But Paul Davies, Michio Kaku, these are other people who have expressed that.
Right.
There are some other methods that might be more fruitful.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Michio Kaku, because now I'm going to talk about television. And there is a television show on Discovery called Curiosity. Some of you may have heard about this. It premiered at the beginning of August. The network describes the show as an adventure of discovery, an expedition to uncover the truths behind life's most challenging questions. And the questions being posed by the show in the second episode is alien invasion. Are we ready? Many recent Hollywood movies and television shows have depicted hostile invading aliens, so it's not surprising to see yet another show exploring the topic of malevolent extraterrestrials. Rhett Allen, an associate professor of physics at Southeastern Louisiana University, recently interviewed Alan Aries, the executive producer for the Curiosity series. In the interview, Aries explained that Alien Invasion episode explores the question of where would they come from? How would they get here? What would their weapons look like? With the hope that the ground... let's see. And Alejandro, you recently watched this episode? Because I believe it aired Sunday, right?
Yeah, yesterday it did, and I did get to catch it. And the beginning was okay, as they talked about astrobiology and all of the galaxies out there and how there is probably life out there. So that was pretty cool, because all the scientists agree there's, established that there's probably life out there. And then they were like, well, what if they came to and they weren't nice? What would we have to look out for? And Michio Kaku made a good point, because he said, really the animals out there, what are you going to be more afraid of? Development or a hunter? And really it's the development that's more dangerous, because they come in and they take all your land and they force you out and everything that lives in that area. And so maybe that's what we'd be more in danger of, kind of like that popular television show, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where they're going to build a highway through here, so they have to take out the planet, kind of thing. Otherwise, they had some interesting ideas when they were talking about an invasion. One thing they also all agreed on was that they wouldn't come here for our resources, which makes sense. If they wanted water, they could go to Europa. Lots of water there. If they wanted gold, silver, any other type of resource, there's planets and asteroids that are full of that stuff out there that they can go visit and get.
And that contradicts Stephen Hawking's comments from a year ago.
Their only guess was maybe they would come here because they want a new planet to live on, and this would be a nice one. And that was kind of the premise from there on. So how do they get rid of the humans? There was a consensus that the first strike might be an EMF type of thing, which, like nuclear bombs, create an EMF which would knock out all of our technology. So then we'd be kind of stranded without being able to communicate with each other. And this is where it started getting silly. And this was funny, because they all really, and this was kind of they even were hesitant to talk about any type of weaponry and stuff like that because they're like, they wouldn't use weapons. They would probably use a virus or something that would kill us all, and we'd be gone, and that's it. Easy cleanup. But, of course, that's too short of a show. They still had a half an hour to fill. So, of course, they start to go over these silly scenarios, just like Battle LA, where, we're fighting these robots and stuff. And one guy was even like, well, maybe we could win, Sometimes the little guy wins, and we, our warriors and our soldiers, they're bred to fight, so maybe they could win. And so they had scenes with battling these machines and stuff, which is kind of silly. But the conclusion was that, they probably wouldn't do any of that. They'd just kind of put us all to sleep.
Well, in the interview with with one of the producers of the show, they did specifically say their intention with the show was to both entertain and inform. So I guess they had to throw in the entertaining aspect of it. And, it's unfortunate to hear that there was a lot of that, because reading about the show, it sounded promising, pulling in experts like Michio Kaku and NASA astrobiologist Lynn Rothschild, they're talking to experts in that scientific setting. I always find that really engaging and fascinating to hear. It's a lot of theorizing, but still that's fascinating to hear the theories that are put forth in that environment. But then when they get the entertainment going, that kind of goes away.
Yeah, that portion of the show was great because there were some really neat people there. Michio Kaku is really funny too. This was kind of a convoluted thing, I think. They said if a spaceship were coming here, we would see it. It would look like a meteor or an asteroid or a comet or something. And we see those things and we watch things all the time. And the things that we're watching flying around, we don't know that they're meteors or something, but they're acting as if that. They're following the laws of gravity and physics as we know it. But if one moved, if there's a meteor coming in and all of a sudden it takes a right turn, that's when Michio Kaku said scientists would pee their pants. That's the term we use, which is pretty funny.
That's a fantastic Michio Kaku quote.
Yeah, that was really funny. Meaning that, of course, then we'd see a demonstration of an intelligent control. But that's kind of silly to assume that we would see something that would show up as this bright light in the sky. I mean, I'm sure with an advanced technology, if they don't want to be seen, they don't have to be. Or if they're using things like gateways or multi-dimensional type of things like people theorize.
Well, it's probably good that you didn't absolutely rave about the episode, because this show explores all sorts of different topics. And if you loved it and we told people, make sure to watch this show to see what they talk about next, we'd have a bunch of people going to watch next Sunday's episode. And I believe it's called Why Does Sex Feel Good?
Yeah, Why is Sex Fun? With that Jake Gyllenhaal's sister, I forget her name.
What is her name?
I can't remember it right now.
Oh, well. But, you and I, I've done most of the griping, I think, about this, but this hostile extraterrestrial theme doesn't seem to be going away. It seems to be getting worse, actually. And just today, it was announced that actor Jean-Claude Van Damme has signed on to play a retired military advisor in an upcoming British sci-fi thriller titled UFO. And, of course, Van Damme is known for his roles in action-packed martial arts-heavy movies, and his inclusion in UFO is a solid indicator that this movie will include the same. So
he's going to karate chop an alien or two.
I know. Got to stop beating up on the aliens. This is terrible. And I've got one more story for us, Alejandro, and I had to talk about this one because it involves our buddy Steve Murillo out in L.A. But UFO sightings are commonly reported on the 4th of July here in the United States. That's our Independence Day, when we blow up a lot of fireworks and other things because we like to blow stuff up, apparently. And that was certainly the case this past 4th of July in Los Angeles, California, where a strange craft was seen in the sky. The incident was investigated by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network. Steve Murillo, the section director for MUFON LA, interviewed witnesses who described the object moving from the southwest to the northeast over Studio City. Murillo suggested that the object could have been a remote-controlled toy, but also noted that the object had been seen in Chino Hills, 40 miles from Studio City. So in order for this UFO to have been controlled by remote, someone would have been in a vehicle following the object, because this craft traveled 40 miles in a matter of minutes. According to the Studio City patch, Murillo stated that it would be impossible to have a remote-controlled toy make it 40 miles in a matter of minutes, and he concluded, "I'm stumped." I love that conclusion.
Yeah, well, Murillo, he's a character. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Just kidding.
Just kidding.
He's always so excited when we mention him on the show, and we keep mentioning him.
Who? Steve Murillo?
Yeah.
I like Steve Murillo.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. Cool dude. He's even wearing a Congress shirt at the MUFON Symposium. So, yeah, that was cool to see him in that story.
Yes, excellent. Well, Alejandro, that is all the time we have for news today. Remember to check out these stories and more at openminds.tv, your source for UFO-related news. I'm Jason McClellan, the UFO news guy, and you've been briefed. Back to you, Alejandro.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Great to have you doing the news again. So, good news. Other stories that you can see on openminds.tv before we get to our guest here. We just posted something today, Historic UFO Sightings Illustrated. So Michael Schratt took and he made some 3D animations of some UFO sightings from 1978 and one from 1994. The one from 1978 is in Arkansas, where there actually was a whole series of UFO sightings. And these things, this one is really weird. It's kind of horseshoed, and it's almost like it has these headlights and these pipes underneath, like, some kind of really old school type of car that's flying around up in the sky, kind of shaped more like a horseshoe. So you'll have to check this out. That's kind of a cool story, and that's at openminds.tv. And then, like Jason said, we have highlights from the British UFO files. And what I mostly did with this story, the British UFO files, when you go there to download them, be sure to download the highlights guide. That's what I've mostly used and cut and paste into this story. But the highlights guide shows you where the good stories are, what's going on the interesting stuff. It's put together by Dr. David Clark, who is kind of a UFO researcher in the UK and helps the National Archives out there put all these files together. There's thousands of files, so going through each one is very difficult. Of course, if you have the time, do it, because you may find something that others have missed, which happens. But you'll want to download that highlights file when you download all those files. And like Jason and I talked about, those files are only free for a month, so go get those, because they are pretty historic, and they're very interesting, because some of these sightings by pilots and police officers, sightings that were very popular in the news, are great sightings and very important sightings. And it demonstrates again, in my mind, with all of these files that they release, that there's something going on. And as Nick Pope, who worked for the MOD, always likes to point out, that if there are things flying around in the sky that we don't know about, like these files indicate, that is a national security issue. So that is why we really should be concerned and have the military looking into these things. So that's some of the cool stuff that we have at openminds.tv. But without further ado, let's get a hold of Clifford Mahooty, good guy, Zuni elder, and this is going to be a lot of fun speaking with him. I am very happy to have just great person who I've had the pleasure to meet quite a few times. Clifford Mahooty, are you on the phone?
I'm on the phone.
Great. How are ya?
I'm doing great.
Well, cool. It's always a lot of fun to talk to you. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. I've been meaning to have you on for a while. And so essentially you are a Zuni elder, correct?
Yes, I am a member of the Zuni tribe in New Mexico. I'm considered now an elder.
Okay.
And so I guess anybody over 65 becomes an elder automatically.
Oh, good. So you get there. Not only do you get discounts at some of the restaurants, you get to be an elder.
That's right. I get the discounts.
Great. And then you're also part of the Kachina community. Is that what it's called?
Well, the Zuni tribe has several societies.
Uh-huh.
One of them is what we call the Kachina Society, which are the order of the tribal group consisting of 6 kivas in Zuni, New Mexico, that perform the Kachina dances.
Uh-huh. Okay, I see. Now, the Zuni is I think, are they the only group who didn't give up their religion?
I think Zuni is the only one that were not overtaken by the different groups that came, especially the Spanish in the original conquest way back in the 1500s.
Uh-huh.
And also with other tribes, but the Zunis adopted a few of the groups within the Spanish orders, but they were never really converted into Christianity.
Uh-huh. So that's pretty interesting. So you yourself, I mean, have you ever been a Christian, or you've always practiced Zuni ways?
I've always I was brought up to be a Zuni.
Mm-hmm.
However, we had a lot of exposure to the different religions that were introduced here in the village since the 1500s. In my lifetime, I had an exposure to other religious groups, but we never, or at least in my case, I never converted into a church or a religious sect or a group of those orders.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, honestly, I feel sad. You know, being a person from the Southwest and visiting places, I've got Native American background. I get really sad when I see, and I don't know if this is good, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but when I see the big churches on the reservations or in some of the, really beautiful Native American ruins, and just kind of the loss of the culture as they changed over to practice those other practices.
Well, especially here in Zuni, if you look at the history of them, of the Zuni people since the 1500s, there were several churches that were built within the villages, but some of them were, of course, when the Indians abandoned those places, they also abandoned the churches. The existing one today is no longer in use, even though the Catholic Church is still here, but the original church built by the Spanish has been renovated at least 2 times that I know of, but it's not in use at all for services.
Mm-hmm.
The latest one was renovated in the 1960s with a cooperation of the Park Service, the Zuni tribe, and probably some type of a federal organization, and of course along with the Catholic Church. And they upgraded that or renovated it to supposedly look like what it did in the 1700s or 1800s. And then after that, there was a bunch of murals that were painted on the walls, and the artist that painted those is still here in Zuni, and he's about 80 years old right now.
Wow. So, Zuni ways, I mean, the Zuni ways, would you consider them a religion?
Zuni ways is a combination.
Uh-huh.
Zuni is a communalistic society. Everything in their way of life involves a lot of religion, ritual, spirituality. So if you come to Zuni and you look at any of the Zuni ceremonies, which is ongoing all year round, a lot of the rituals that are open to the public, you can see, especially like the Kachina dances. However, in other practices that we still do, the other rituals, the general public is not allowed, and even some of the members of the tribe are not allowed unless you belong to that organization, that kiva or that group.
Mm-hmm.
So Zuni is basically the religion is a sort of like the glue of the community, not only with the people but also with the land and the practices that we do in many, many different rituals.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Kachinas, would Kachinas kind of be similar to saints, I guess? Just a lot of different types of Kachinas that have different meanings?
Yes, if you look at some of the others, like for example, the sainthood, or if you look at Greek mythology, they have the gods of war, they have the gods of this and that. But in the Kachinas represent many different forms of what their orders are, and also for the way the Zuni has to communicate with the other than things here on their planet Earth. And so they're also treated as messengers. Looked upon as messengers, or keepers of the ways of how the Zuni is supposed to be carrying out their lives here on this planet.
Mm-hmm. And now, one of the things that you refer to often is that, could you give an example of some of the popular or the Kachinas that are very important, and explain them and what they teach?
Well, one of the big ceremony, the ritual Kachina ceremony that we, the Zunis perform, is held every year in December at the end of the year, and that is referred to as the Shalako ceremony. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty well published, and there's a lot of history based upon the information provided by many different groups in the past, like the Bureau of Ethnology, the different anthropologists, archaeologists that used to live here among the Zunis way back in the 1800s, and even up to this date. But the Kachina ceremony that's referred to as the Shalako ceremony, which is a reenactment of the space connection that is performed to continue the ritual in which the Zuni are provided many different things, such as livelihood, such as long life, relationships, and how to conduct themselves in the world. And also it talks about how they had come and provided plant and animal life on this planet to the Zuni people. Mm-hmm. So it's a very complex ceremony. The way to understand it is that you have to really understand the ritual, because a lot of these are sung in a chant type form, mm-hmm. and also the rituals that are carried out, and it's the Kachinas are dressed like those visitors that came to this planet, and so it's a very elaborate ceremony. It continues for about a week and a half.
Wow.
Depending on what. So and they do this on one night. They have an all-night dance. The next day they have an all-day ritual, and then the following week is when the other groups of Kachinas come over here to bless for the coming new year. So it's elaborate. I think that if a person came to observe these practices, one needs to either have a good informant or study some of the literature that's based upon these performances from the past.
Now, I remember you talking about how a lot of what's out there is false, like where journalists or people from the West, or the Spaniards, or essentially the white people would come and ask about the Kachinas. They weren't always given accurate information to put in their books.
Well, that's true. I think that if you look at a lot of your publications from because history is made by those people that wrote the books.
Yeah.
And then a lot of them were, it's sort of like a game that they had to play. Once they found out that the Spanish were here not as good people, they had to convert to a sort of an operation that can say, we can only say so much because you've already taken some of the stuff away that we used to do for our rituals. So they would, it's just like the term called the wild goose chase. Because they would not survive under their conquest, so they had to revert to a covert operations type approach to say, well, we can only give you so much. A lot of that information was forced out of those people that were the keepers of those rituals, those knowledge. But also, on the other hand, our own tribal members in the past were coerced into giving them information for a price. I mean, politics is the same today as it was 5 centuries ago.
Right. So what is a good source? If you were to recommend to people to find accurate information, where would they go?
Well, I think the best source would be to go and, first of all, you need it's a step approach. You take all the information that has been written by the official groups that they had, because I quoted the Bureau of Ethnology, the Smithsonian, and other groups that have been through this part of the country, even going far back as Bandelier and people like Frank Hamilton Cushing, and some of the folks that had been here among the Indian tribes at that time. Because when they wrote those books, the information was not, it was given to them, but the interpretation was the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
So you might, the first order of way to learn about these things is to study those books and all the publications. And then the second step is to come, say, like to Zuni or to Hopi or any of the other tribes to work among the people themselves, to sort of review the notes that you had already, and to bring yourself up to speed with what the members of the tribe knowledge is. But it has to be done this way, because a lot of our rituals and ceremonial practices and orders of the different groups in the villages are becoming extinct, so to speak, because of the influence that we have in this nation that we are. It's very difficult to practice because a lot of it requires a lot of ritual. For example, like the eagle, the American eagle, whether it be a bald eagle or a white-tailed eagle. We have our rituals that are based upon the feathers of those eagles. Out here, because of the environment, we no longer have eagles, and so we have to depend on one source of eagles, which is in I think it's the Fish and Wildlife Services. So if you don't have an eagle to perform a ceremony, I mean, what good is the ceremony, because you don't have the parts that go with the whole system that you're supposed to perform. Mm-hmm. So this is there's a lot of things that has affected the declination of religious and ceremonial practices among the Zunis. And if you look at the other side of this coin, if you go to any powwow that they have throughout the nation, all over the country, which is very popular for a tourist attraction, a lot of those eagles' feathers that you see on those commercial dancers are from the same species that we are not allowed to have over here. So a lot of these, there's a lot of limiting factors that are involved in carrying out our rituals.
Mm-hmm. So when you had mentioned earlier that the Kachinas, and part of these rituals was about remembering the visitors coming here from space. I mean, do the Zuni then, as a group, believe that these were people from elsewhere coming to teach and share share with the humans?
The original visitors were the actual beings that came from different parts of the universe.
Uh-huh.
And the way that they used to come here was that it's just like, and I've stated this many times, is that it's like that Star Trek, remember when they beam me up Scotty type thing?
Uh-huh.
Where they would appear from a different dimension and appear here, and when they perform whatever they need to do to carry on the for mankind, the Zuni mankind, to carry on their lives here, then after that they would disappear again. Well, this what according to my teachings from the Kachina priesthood, according to my teachings, this went on for a number of years until the population was declining at a rate, because these people, whether it was by abduction or whether it's by people just falling in love with those beings that came over here to perform their ceremonies with song, dance, and good ritual, blessings, whether it be agriculture, whether it be the four-legged creatures for food, like the deer.
Mm-hmm.
But I said they were, and then also they were the providers of the rain. The rain is a number one requirement out here in the Zuni world for agriculture. So when these people used to come, or these things or beings or whatever used to come here to be among the Zuni people, they were losing too many, and so they had a sort of like a summit maybe between those gods. They used to call them gods, and they're referred to as gods, and then the priesthood of the villages at that time, because there were many. So that there's got to be some way that we have to adopt here, so that we do not go through this whole thing of abduction or losing our community.
And the Zunis were losing people?
Yes, the Zunis were losing people because these people would go with them. The visitors from and they were from the different world.
So they would fall in love with the visitors. Okay, go. Sorry. They would fall in love with the visitors, or become friends, or somehow the visitors would take them with.
Yeah, or other way I interpreted it as maybe they were abducted.
Just taken, stolen?
Yeah, just taken, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came into this truce among the brotherhood or whatever of the hierarchy of the Kachina and the humans, the Zuni humans at that time, they reverted to a Kachina system, but there were several different things that had. This was sort of like a contract. There were certain things that had to be abided by. There are certain things that they provide, and they sort of have to do what the Zunis have to also provide. It was a contract type approach. So it has overtones of the theory of the Eisenhower connection with the aliens at that time. So you give us this, and here's what you're going to do, and we here on the planets will do this, and we'll have this type of a requirement on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
That's where and this is according to my teachings of the Zuni elders, which was given to them by their elders. I don't know how far back, but that's when they came up with the Kachina system. So they went into a mask type approach because They wanted. So I think what my analysis and my conclusions is that they made it the best way that they can to depict those beings that used to come. And instead of maybe antennas, they would substitute it like a feather.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they had certain clothes that, or suits or whatever you want to call them, their clothing type. So they made an imitation of that, and they just adopted throughout the whole Southwest. If you go to any of the pueblos on any Kachina ritual, you can see the patterns and the motifs of all the weaving that are similar to all the pueblos. Hopi, Zuni, the tribes around Albuquerque, the motifs are the same. And also they have, because Zuni was at that time a very direct connection with the space people, they refer to Zuni as the headquarters or the main center for the Kachina, and they call us the Kachina people.
Oh, wow.
Same way with the Hopis.
Mm-hmm.
Same way with the Hopis, because I think they were more contact with them out here because of their isolation, or at that time, I mean, this is thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the one other thing that is very prevalent in this concept that I'm talking about is that if you go and look at petroglyphs, there's the imitation approach of what you see in the air, you put it on a rock. If you see an aura, well, you're going to put a wavy pattern on the head, or if you see so I think that the connection was that they made it as close to what they see or what they dealt with at that time. I mean, you and I can go out there and look at it. If we're not the best artists in the world, we can attempt to make a painting of what we see at that time, and then we try to come back and review that, see, well, I think it looked like this. No, it had this one out here. So it became an effort of that. So what happened was that in my research and my interpretation of what the grandfathers told me was that these things were, the Kachinas were made to look like what used to come over here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another thing that, as part of this analogy I use as a contract, is that they are here, but they are invisible during those ceremonies, and even on a daily basis. The Zuni believe in the spirits being here with them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the Zuni also believe that the Kachinas are here. The only reason that they appear in the plaza is, and we represent them at that time, and you become them. You become them as in spirit, and in what the rituals call for, you become them. So it's like an altered state type involvement. When you're performing those ceremonies, you have to go through many different ritual steps, primarily the fasting part, the cleansing part, the mindset, all that before you go in there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that are connected with that, and that's now I did not get this from any book.
Right.
I didn't get this from any anthropologist or ethnologist or archaeologist. These were the ones. This information was given me by my grandfathers and my elders in their own concept, in their own language. But what took me some time to figure out was using the white man's approach to analysis and coming out with it, so I could come back and I would ask them, is this what they meant? And of course their teachings is only on one side. So when you start talking about paranormal, you start talking about quantum physics, you start talking about molecular transfer or altered state approaches to things. And so to them, that's foreign to them. They have no idea. But when they talk about how they do that, then you can interpret it. So it's been quite a challenge on my part.
Yeah.
To decipher the meanings of it.
So it's
because
just kind of kind of a communication issue in describing things. How well they don't consider when they're becoming, like when if just to kind of get to what you're talking about, when they talk about becoming one of the Kachinas, and to a Westerner it might be considered, or in a common culture, as an altered state, but I would assume the elders might not think of it like that, would they?
Oh no.
Yeah.
Because they don't think like that.
Right.
They have their thinking is in a different way of dimension, and because they're a direct connect to the God system, the spiritual system. So when you start talking about that, especially in the interpretation using the English language, they would probably look at you and say, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
So it's a communication link that is kind of hard to make that connection.
Well, and luckily you're an engineer, so did you have to go off? Where did you get your degree?
I got my degree at New Mexico State University.
Okay, so you had to leave the reservation for that, but luckily, that's in Albuquerque, so there still is a Native American presence, but at least then you got...
No, New Mexico State is in Las Cruces.
Oh, Las Cruces. Okay.
Yeah, there's the states and the university schools are in the state are rivals.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh.
The Lobos are our enemies.
Uh-oh. Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. We'll let you go. Nah, just kidding.
So in Las Cruces, so you got to, and especially with engineering, which is a very much, I mean, that's kind of very logical and, mathematical, which is a lot different than kind of what the Zuni kind of ways are. So you got to integrate and see both sides, right?
Well, I think that's one of the very interesting things, that a lot of people will be a linear approach to engineering, and they can go all the way up to a PhD level in engineering and not even talk about or think about things like we as Indian people in Zuni do, about history, about UFOs, about paranormal stuff, and spirituality, especially spirituality and the spirit world. We talk about the spirit world, but what happened in those days? And one thing that's very interesting is that during my academic years, a lot of people ask me, they say, "Well, where did you go to school? Why did you go there? And what?" And they asked me a little history. I say, "Well, it started out with Sputnik. People don't know what Sputnik is in modern generations." And so I was in school during the whole space age, the Mercury series, the Apollo series, and so while this was all happening in Zuni, I thought that we were so ancient that I go through rituals and I go through that. It's just a ceremony. But I did not realize at that time, until I came back out and getting into the orders of the Kachina medicine and other ritualistic groups, is that these people over here in Zuni were so advanced in their rituals, in their thinking, and the space connection was here all this time. It's just that I didn't listen to what they were saying. So coupled with that, by this time I was already an engineer, having struggled through all those powerful math courses, physics, all these other courses that go on to become a good engineer. And I saw this connection after I got my degree, and then after that I pursued further courses in a lot of different subjects, especially in the physics field and other high-powered engineering stuff. But when I heard the elders talk and I started getting involved with it, I just saw this thing that just like a new world lighting up. I said, we've always had this. I mean, and then after I turned about 40 or 50 years old, I got to the point where I said, the Indians knew this stuff, and the white men are just now catching up.
So in the Zuni thought, UFOs are vehicles from space.
Yes, they've always known that.
Mm-hmm.
And they've even got references in a lot of the ethnologies that were here. They even have a reference of the UFO. There was this book that I sort of present at my presentations. Is a book by the Bureau of Ethnology, a woman ethnologist that was here. She refers to that. She talks about all the different Kachinas that represent certain things like meteors. Kachinas represent certain constellations, and one of them in there, and I knew this, but I really didn't read about it. There's a Kachina dancer that is actually a UFO dancer. And when she wrote about that, the interpretation of the people in 1920s, when she asked the Indians what that dancer was, and they told her, said, well, that's a UFO Kachina. And she even went on to state in that paragraph, they said that the Indians had told her, or she wrote that the UFO was seen that looked like a dirigible, and this was in the 1920s, that flew over Zuni. So there's always been a space connection. I can't see how they can get away from it. Again, the interpretation is the one that is the key. If you listen to a chant, if you listen to a prayer in Zuni, because Zuni is a language all by itself. It's not connected to any other indigenous groups here. And then if you go to, say, like some of the petroglyphs over here close to the Zuni reservation, you can see the rock drawings, the petroglyphs of those things. However, the interpretation is the one that's hard to do, because, I mean, these were made thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And they have been around for forever. And we even refer to them in our prayer systems. And that one passage in there in our prayer system, they refer to them as the night priesthood. The night priesthood, and they only appear instantaneously. That's the way that the word is used. The Zuni word is used as instantaneously. Not, like it's not going to be there like the moon all night long. They just appear and they disappear. So that's even in our prayer system. But it took a lot of scientific thought, the scientific method analysis, and the interpretation between the back and forth with the Zuni and the white man's physics, the white man's cosmology. You name the whole science that affects the whole UFO the phenomenon, and then you start interpreting these things on the chants, the songs, the rituals, and we do this almost on a daily basis. But the Zuni, if you tell a Zuni, they'll look at you and they think that you're crazy. I mean, I've been ridiculed by my own community here, because they see me on a lot of different network interpretation of these, But it doesn't make any difference to me because all I'm doing is I'm not making this up. I'm just interpreting what is here and what has been taught me. And so I think a lot of people are now realizing that. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because here in Zuni country, there's UFO activity almost on a nightly basis.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, the Zuni country, where the Zuni, another unique thing is that you all never migrated. I mean, you're where you lived. The Zuni come from New Mexico and the deserts out there, and that's where you are to this day. Not like, unfortunately, a lot of groups who had to get pushed out of the East and relocated.
Well, there was a lot of, again, because in our rituals, in our religious chants and our songs, they actually migrated many, many different directions and many, many different places. But this was it's like in the Bible, this was a chosen land, for them. But they had to go through a lot of hardships and a lot of other different things in their history. And this, again, is in all our rituals. And so when this is considered the middle of the earth for not only the Zuni people, but for other tribes that are out here in the Southwest, they refer to Zuni as the place of the ant people in the names. Of course, a lot of these names like Zuni or Hopi or now there's Spanish name people like San Juan, Acoma, and all that. They're names given them by the conqueror, not the way that the Indians call themselves. Mm-hmm. So this is in all ritual ceremonies and all medicine practices, Kachinas, because other pueblos also have Kachinas. But right. This is to be, Zuni is the main center, except Hopi. Hopi is all by itself. Again, they're like the Zuni. They were the ones that we all came from the Grand Canyon, the Hopi and the Zuni, and other tribes that are extinct right now. And there was also throughout the history there was a lot of what you might call cross-pollination type thing approach. We adopted each other's practices, especially in the medicine societies. You can hear songs that are very foreign to the Zuni tongue. And so there's a lot of back and forth migrations among different groups. Yep. And also, it's sort of like a melting pot approach, but each one had something to offer. Yeah. I think that was their survival. If you came to a civilization that was intact and you're an outsider, you had to in exchange for your life, you had to give up something, or hey, he said, here I have this to contribute. Can you adopt us into your tribe? So that's why we have a lot of different groups within our own societies today, and also within our own villages. Mm-hmm. They came from many, many different groups.
Now, getting back, I wanted to get back on the Kachinas and the idea that they had come from space and come to help you all. And I remember some of your stories too about, maybe you could clarify this, about how they actually brought people here.
Yeah, what the rituals talk about is that they actually brought the fruits of the earth, so to speak. Uh-huh. Because when the planet was formed, they had to bring in animal plant life, so they had to rejuvenate the earth, so to speak, with these with different animals, different plants, so the people on this planet can survive. And others, I think there were other people that came with them, or other life forms, so to speak, that would help them carry out to become functional, and so they were sort of like teachers. I mean, how could an elaborate system like the Kachina Society doings be carried out without somebody being a teacher?
Yeah.
When these were pure forms at that time, they're just barely functional. And because it took many, it's sort of an evolutionary process. So once that they were up to par about how they can practice it, then they left. But they did not leave. They did not leave per se. They just said, okay, now you carry it on. We'll be here, but you have to continue to practice. It's sort of like it's a growing up process. You know, at a certain time, you know, it's like an eagle raising its young up in the nest. It's time for you to go, and they just drop them off, and but they're still there, watching over them, make sure that they survive. So that's the quotes that, or that's the interpretation that I got from the grandfathers.
Now, do you feel they actually brought humans here to begin with?
No, the humans were already here,
okay,
but they were not functional as humans.
Okay.
They were life forms, but the I talk about the emissaries, which every Indian tribe has, is the twin god heroes. The twin gods, every tribe has those. I don't care whether you go to Hopi, you go to Isleta, you go to up in Taos. They have the twin gods, which are the warrior gods, that are the keepers of the sky and of space. And they were actually the emissaries of the light being. The light being is the equivalent to a God concept, because that the light being is an energy source, or we call it the keeper or the great spirit. You know, a lot of Indian tribes have talked about that, but the white man has interpreted or said that this is a great spirit. Well, that's in my teachings. That's the whole space God concept that is referred to. And again, it's like a system. It's a orderly system where the next tier of people that will take care of these, or to make these people functional. In this case, it was the twin gods. And of course, after that, they were functional, then they introduced the Kachinas, and they introduced a lot of different plants and animals, because they were given those by the great creator on this planet. And so they were given orders on how to take care of the plant life, the animal life, and the social structure that was also provided them. And that's why if you in the Indian world, they talk about Mother Earth. Everybody reverses, and then the Father Son, and so that's it's very complex, depending on who's doing the interpreting. Because I've read a lot of books on the archaeologists and the ethnologists, and they refer to the sun. They don't talk about the great light being, because they didn't know how to interpret it from the different tribes. So this was before ufology took off, so they didn't know anything about how to make a reference to the different planetary systems, the different galaxy orders. So they did not have that. Maybe they did, but they did not know how to interpret it from the Indians. But we also, we make references to all the star systems.
And are all these Kachinas from different star systems or different planets?
Yes, they are. That's why they have a different function. That's why they have also a different design. They have a different. If you go to a Pueblo mixed dance ceremony, they call it a mixed dance. They got Kachinas of all different kinds and colors and different yells, different. They make different sounds. That's because they're from different parts of the universe.
And you had mentioned something about the shape of kivas having something to do with the shape of their craft.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I made a lot of references to, which a lot of I could not read anywhere, is that see the Mesa. I mean, Chaco. The Chaco culture was a very, very large community, and a lot of people. I think my own interpretation and my own analysis is that the Great Kiva at the Chaco, because at that time they did not have kivas as such. The kivas were made after the Kachina societies were created, so this is prior to the Kachina society. So the crafts had to, if they were circular, they needed to have some type of a landing port type approach. I think that Chaco over there, you look at I've never been inside it, but I've seen pictures of it. And a lot of your places out here in the Southwest, we have points that are commonly referred to as by the white people as stargates or vortices. This is where I believe that they have this connection directly, where they could actually come through those and materialize on this planet, and then from that point, that when they leave, they go back to those things. I mean, it's just like coming over, landing at a big airport, taking a rental car, going over there and visit, come back, check the rental car, and then get back in your aircraft and go forth. I think this is basically a very, very crude way of thinking, but I think that's what they were. But a lot of your kivas were never, they were circular, because I believe that because they had to have some type of a connection. When they have rituals, they make that connection. And I think in the old days, when they used to come, they needed to have some type of a landing place where they can go and have that direct contact. And after that, then they started going into a different size kivas.
And a kiva is for rituals, and is a kiva, was it only men that can go into a kiva, or the elders?
Well, it's again depending on what the ritual is. All the ritual is it's an orderly type thing. For example, if it's only Kachina, there's a lot of tribes that also have women that belong to the Kachina. And if you look at the social order system of the Southwest American Indian tribe, it's a matrilineal, matriarchal society.
Right.
The men do all the work. So who else would be in the kivas except the men? And but actually they work for the women. I mean, this is that's one thing that you don't see unless you really study it.
Yeah.
But no, the kivas are used for rituals of all sorts. The only reason you don't see that is because there are certain times of the rituals or ceremonies that women are also allowed to perform certain duties within the kivas, and so they're allowed to go in there.
And one of the other things you mentioned, which I thought was kind of neat, is that the Kachinas also, it wasn't always business, that they would come down to interact and to kind of have fun and to dance and to entertain.
No, it's because they were the ones that, there's two things that in all the prayer systems of the Southwest Indian tribes, they're the rainmakers. They're the bringers of the rain. And the second thing is the bringers of the agriculture. You know, whether it be corn, whether it be vegetables, even the four-legged ones. You know, like the deer, the antelope. So they're the ones that, whether they actually bring them, whether they actually brought them at that time in times past, but they're the ones that we give rituals to ask for that abundance and rain, for example. And the Kachinas are the two primary sources we ask for them is rain and the grain. The grain being cooked. Right now, when you talk about grain, it's primarily corn, but in the old days, grain used to be, or the interpretation of grain at that time would be the wild plant.
It's getting kind of hard to hear you.
Yeah, maybe my...
Okay, that's better.
Better?
Yeah, but did you say that they felt kind of like, I remember this, and maybe I just remember it wrong, that they had come down because they saw at times we were bored, so they would come down to help entertain.
Well, in the beginning, according to the keepers of those the storyteller, the story rituals and the records, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
When they created the earth here, and the people were settled down, and then the villages were done, and they were at a stage where they say, well, what are we supposed to do for entertainment? It's nice, it's a nice planet, it's a nice place, but what are we going to do? That's when they requested by a ritual again, by the priesthood, and in those days they had direct connection with the universe. So they said, we gotta have some type of entertainment here, and so that's why they created the Kachina to go, or the beings at that time, the star beings at that time said, yeah, we gotta have that. You cannot just be there and not be entertained. So that's entertainment is also one of the things that is given by those gods. Mm-hmm. Entertainment, the balance of your whole body, your psyche, you name it. When you go, it's just like going to a symphony concert. You go there and you go through this euphoria type thing of the music. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the Kachinas provided them music. It was like play acting or something that is directly related to the balance of their mental stage and their connection with the physical. So that's one of the things that we are also instructed to do when we are here in the villages, is that you have to go over there and to bring yourself up, your body and your spirit up, go listen to the Kachinas, go watch them dance. And it works, because there's a lot of other rituals that go with it. Mm-hmm. Entertainment, song, just a feeling of what they're saying, and so it's a balancing type system.
Gotcha. And are the Kachinas then, with the UFO activity that you have out there, do you believe, is there still interaction with the Kachinas, or are they just kind of, you think those people are looking after us?
They're just, they're still always, time means nothing to them. Mm-hmm. Time is irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything to them. What they are is that they appear. Again, they can transform into anything that they want, because they're in a different dimension, and they're the watchers. They're here, but again, they are not going to going back to my analogy of a contract. If you do this, we will provide you this. Mm-hmm. So when the drought comes about, when we had heavy storms this past spring, we had humongous storms, and the Zuni will say somebody is not performing the ritual that the gods ask us to do. That's why they're angry. They're not, they're not nice guys all around, because, again, it's because of he said, if you do this, we will provide you this. So that's why they can also do harm to you if they want to, because you're not performing your part on the planet here. Mm-hmm. If you renege on your agreement, your contract, we're not going to provide you rain because you're not doing what you said you were going to do. So this is why we are very harsh on a lot of these things, the rituals that we have to go to, the sacrifices that's needed. And it is true today. A lot of our priesthood, our Kachina medicine order directors, the order chiefs, so to speak, are not performing what they are supposed to do. So that's why they say, well, that's because the head medicine man is not doing his part. That's why we're having this. Whether that's an excuse or not, but that's the way it has been carried out throughout the centuries.
Yeah. And have you said that, I guess, wrapping up, because we are running out of time, that you've kind of been, the information you're sharing is not everyone feels that it should be shared with the white people, that it's special Zuni information.
That is true. Mm-hmm. But I believe that the more information is given, because this whole world, this whole planet is awakening. Mm-hmm. And I think that we all have to do our part in order not to be fearful of what the outside forces have developed on this planet here. Now, I do this because primarily for the reason that the younger generation of Zuni has to have this information. I mean, I can withstand the ridicule, the ostracism, and all that, but I talk to a lot of young people. They have no clue as to what we are all about. They have no idea what Kachinas are all about. So maybe my doing this, even if I take a roundabout way of doing this thing, at least some message will go through.
Well, I thank you very much for doing it. I know a lot of people have. I remember, being down in Tucson with a packed room, and they just loved hearing from you and sharing this information. So thank you very much for sharing the information with me and listeners of our show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Clifford. So that was a really fun show. It's great to have him on. Hopefully we will have him on again one day to talk more, because he's a great speaker. And keep an eye out for Ancient Aliens and his episode on there, and where he talks about pretty much the same kind of thing. So it's really good, and he's a lot of fun, and especially if you have a chance to go see a conference or something and see him talk, that's fun. He is speaking some conference sometime soon. I can't remember which, but he's a lot of fun. So check that out. And of course, it's really interesting information if you can look into other Native American beliefs, because it's really extraordinary how lots of Native American tribes out there believe that they have origins from the stars. There are other people who speak on this, and perhaps we'll be able to get them on. Unfortunately, one gentleman I know who is a professor is really getting older, and he has a difficult time. I've been trying to get him on the show for a while, but unfortunately that hasn't been able to work out. But some other interesting stuff, because unfortunately, we're really losing a lot of this information. Like Clifford had talked about, a lot of these legends and a lot of these stories were transferred verbally. And so, unfortunately, we don't have that anymore. Anyway, thank you so much for watching or listening to the show, whichever you did today. And be sure to check us out next week. And check out openminds.tv, because we have our news up there on a regular basis. And I just created a Facebook fan page, Alejandro Rojas, because the website, like I told you guys before, the UFO Think Tank page is like maxed out. We have 5,000 friends. That's the most we can have. We have 1,000 people wanting to become friends, but they can't, because we can only have 5,000. So go to that Facebook or the Open Minds Magazine Facebook and friend us there, and follow me on Paranormal RPTR on Twitter. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.